I have found only two people enjoy change. That would be a wet baby and a very busy cashier. Today, we're going to be talking about how change affects an organization.
America's positive, pragmatic Bob Goshen.
Why is it? Why is it that people are so reluctant when it comes to change? You know, my life has been going into organizations, corporations, doesn't matter. It's places where people are having a problem getting their people to change and get on the one page, one voice, going in one direction. They have so many people coming, and as it's found today, pretty evident that the majority of the people that come to work are only there to collect a check to begin with. But then when you come into an organization, you're changing. Let's say you're expanding your organization. Let's say that you're changing marketing directions or advertising directions, or in some cases where I go in, I'll come in with an equity group where a different group has come in to buy that company, and there's going to be some changes. And what I have found whenever we go in, that a lot of people just go, what are we going to do? How is it going to affect me? Because the people are automatically resistant, they're automatically reluctant, and they're automatically rebellious. Now, why? Why is that? Now, I found over a period of time that most of it is just the fear of the unknown. Now, here you are, a new employee, and in this case where I did a company many years ago that had 350 employees, and another equity group had been in before us, and they had just really done some damage with these guys, with this, what I call the stakeholders, the people that make things happen. And so here we come, and here we are getting ready to make change. And so if you're an employee, you've got to think about, what is the fear? What's going to happen? What's the fear of the unknown? And they had seen failures from the previous change, so they're automatically thinking, oh boy, here we go again. You know, we've already been married once, and now here comes a new husband, right? And then they get fearful because they know they have to learn new things. Change is traumatic, and a lot of it is triggered by the employee by fear, just total fear. And my responsibility is to move that fear over to faith. See, faith in your ability to perform. A lot of people are fearful about the external things that's going to happen to them, but internally, if you have the belief in yourself and the confidence in yourself, then you're going to be able to perform no matter who it is or what's happening. Faith that the change also, instead of being bad, it'll be good. You know, automatically we see something getting ready to happen in our organization, and we just run over to the side that says, no, this can't be happening. And we see all these fatal things that's going to be happening in the organization. And what that does, it just pulls our energy down. And we default really over into this emotional side instead of stepping back logically and evaluating and how it's going to affect me. See, the majority of the negative items that I have found in my life that we place into our brain, if we allow that to happen, they never come to pass. I read an article not too long ago that all the worry and all the things that are happening to people today, 97% of them never come to pass, but they spend all of this energy, and I have, in preaching to the choir here, where I just spend all this non-creative energy worrying about what's going to happen here and what's going to happen there. See, we have to move. I found that I have to move from feelings, how I feel, over into facts. I've got to move from that reaction area to the reasoning area. Many years ago, I had an institute called Restoration of Our Christian History, where I taught how the early founders came to America and changed things in America, and established America on this constitutional value. But they taught what was known as the 4 R's to get these young kids out of this emotional state. They wanted to move them over into the rational state, start thinking rationally. And the 4 R's was, number 1, reason. They would teach young students, young kids, how to reason. Reason is simply this, and I've shared it before, I'll share it again, I'll share it the rest of my life. The reasoning skills, I'm sorry to say, evidently by looking at Washington, D.C. and some of our public education and other organizations, It's gone. We've lost our actual reasoning skills. Now, what are reasoning skills? If we hear something from somebody, or if we read something in a book, that needs to line up with us mentally in our head, our heart, and our gut. How many of you know what I'm talking about? How many of you ever heard a motivational speaker or an inspirational speaker or a pastor or a CEO of a corporation go, we're going to do it, and they're just talking, and down in your gut you're going, that ain't right. That ain't right. So reason through what someone's saying. Reason through what you're reading. Does it make sense? And number two, they taught them research. Now, back in the old days, we had an encyclopedia, we had all these dictionaries, and we'd hear a word, we'd hear a statement, we'd hear a comment. That was our Google. We'd spend hours in these books trying to determine, researching the truth. Today, it's so simple. It's this thing called Google. Now, you have to watch Google sometimes because I found it sometimes not be really on track. But if you Google enough, you'll begin to learn how to define what's real and what's not. But Google, in other words, today, if we're hiring someone, if we're moving into another location or whatever, we can Google and get the facts. So we reason, we research, and then we record all these things. Record. I can't tell you the number of times I go into a company and I'll speak and I sit there and here's what I get in the audience. And hopefully by mid-time, at least they'll put their arms down a little bit. But not one of them. Very seldom do I find them with a pad and a pen taking notes. You see, the early children were taught that when they were around a mentor or other educators or whatever to take notes. Here's why. They knew that information that's being said or even being read will not become your information until you record what your heart says about that information. Isn't that true? See, I'll read a book. I like to read around about 3 books a month, and I keep them going all the time. It's really exciting for me because what I'll do, I'll get a book, and I'll start reading it, and I'll use ink to underscore things. I go, oh, that's good. And then I go back, and I will look at yellow marking everything, and then I'll go back and I'll record on a piece of paper things that I can use either in behavioral changes with family or friends or myself. So reason, research, record, these are the things that you as an employee or a member of a company or a corporation that's making a change, you need to know these things, and you need to then, the fourth R is to relate them. Whatever you learn, whatever has been embedded into your heart and your mind, you need to be able to relate that to others. Again, and I cannot blame them. Yeah, I wish I had. I do have some old video, and I'm going to bring it up and have my producers maybe archive that and make some really interesting notes on it. Because the first day I walked into this auditorium, if you can please imagine with me, I walked into an organization with a little over 300 employees, and here they are sitting in this big auditorium, and I'm walking in to tell them how we're going to be different, how this company's going to be different. Now, in order for me to do that, I had to put myself in their position. In their position, I'm sitting there going, yeah, I've heard this stuff before. Yeah, right on, right? Because we were the third equity group into that company. The original founder went to prison, so he was out of there. And then another equity group came in, and here we came, and it was my job to help show them that life is more than what's happened in the past. And folks, it's hard because they're sitting there looking, yeah, great, here's another doggone change. And so the very first thing that I do when I go into an organization, I start with what's known as the C-suite, or the head of an organization, or the head of a church, or whatever the association may be. And I'll take a rear view mirror and I'll put it in a sock, and then I will take a ball peen hammer and I'll bust that mirror, and I'll start handing that mirror, and each one of those top CEOs and leaders busts that mirror. Now, what I want them to get across in their brain from doing that is don't look behind us. We've got a new forward-looking direction that we're going. This change, we don't go back and say, I remember when that happened and this did. No. Change. When you change, you have to look forward. You've got to move forward, and you've got to. Our responsibility as leaders is to help our employees and people that work for us see the possibility of the new change. But what happens? Well, remember again, the people that are going to be affected by this change, they're reluctant. Number one, they're reluctant by, oh, great, new policies, new procedures, new plans. I've got to start learning all new stuff. Put yourself in their position. Most change that I've been in, and I'm going to make a kind of a little shot here across the bow of some of you equity groups, they come in and they look at the technical side. And they'll look at the bottom line profits. They go to their spreadsheets. They look over to how much they're paying in insurance and how much they're paying employees and what's the overhead costs. And they take a pencil and they just start whacking things down. And most equity groups are from that position. Their position is to lean a company up where they can make more money. But they, many times, those that I've worked with, do not understand the human side of an organization, or what I call the stakeholders. The people that are going to be affected that will actually determine how powerful this change will be. Folks, it's easy to sit in your office in the top of a tower and decide on change. It's easy to do that. It's hard to get the human factor involved, the people. Habits are harder to change than structure. Let me say it again. A person's habits are harder to change than a structure. You can change a structure in an organization. We're going to move this person here, this moves this person, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's so easy. But now to put that into place with people. I want to read this statement that I think is so important. Everything we've learned drives toward one solid conclusion. The rules of governance or self-governance for effective business enterprises today are being determined by their, culture today are being determined by their culture, not their organizational structure. The culture that you put together when you're making this change and you're getting everyone involved is far more important than the structure. This is what we're going to do to create profit. You see, trying to apply improvement methods to an unreceptive culture, and that's what it'll be if you don't start working with those people immediately. It's kind of like applying a Band-Aid underwater. There's nothing wrong with the Band-Aid. Folks, it's just not going to stick. Now, when you get into where you're changing an organization and you're changing a culture, here's some of your barriers. You're going to have those in that organization that are always blaming and having excuses. Well, this is not going because it didn't go that way in the past. And those are barriers. Lack of action, where you'll share with people, here's what we need to do, and they just don't take off. They won't go. The can-do attitude is lost. That's a barrier. Internal competition where departments are fighting with one another. Well, I'm accounting, and over here is human resources, and they don't know what they're doing. Competition, it's a turf war that can happen within an organization that is just futile if you allow it. Now, to break this barrier, you've got to do these things. You got to ask at the very beginning when you go in, and I'll sit down with the pastor or the owner of the company or whatever the case may be, and I'll say, hey, you're making a major change right now. You're going to be making additions. You're going to be adding. You're going to be growing. You're going to be doing this. How is it affecting your people? And the question is, who will be impacted by this change? Write it down. Who are they? What departments, what individuals will be impacted by this change? How will it impact both the upside and the downside as we change? Inclusion is the most important part. It's the most important key to move change forward. No command and control. Those days are over. By golly, we're going to do it this absolutely way, or it's not going to be done. Those days are over. Today it's about collaboration, to build down into that base of leadership, and bring them up and let them have the vision that you're having to make the change in this organization. Success, very simple, in an organization or a corporation is based upon the change. And when you're changing that culture is so important. So as we move forward and we start looking at new organizations and corporations and understanding that so often we have these changes, take these things in account. Take them in account. Understand, if I can't get anything across, you, the top of the list, whether you're a CEO or a head of an organization, very quickly write down and determine how this change we're doing, how is it going to impact our team? And then you determine what you're going to do to get that team on board. And folks, you get them involved, you'll have the most growth you've ever seen in any organization. I've turned a lot of them around and seen them kind of just, and then explode because that team starts working together. So until next time, I'm looking forward to having you contact me and talk to me on my email at bob@bobgoshen.com, or you can DM me whatever you might want to do. If you have a topic you'd like for me to cover, I'll certainly do it. But I want to always give you some content that will help someone out there at this time. Have a great day.